work can.
All right, it is 6:30, and I will call this meeting of the Lake Mills Area School Board Education, meeting to order. Our mission statement is preparing all of today's students for tomorrow's opportunities. And has the meeting been properly posted?
Yes, it was posted on the LMASD website at the Lake Mills Post Office and provided to the Lake Mills Leader.
All right, then I will call this meeting to order, and I'll invite all to stand and join in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I will apologize to all out there. We are experiencing technical difficulties with board docs, so you'll see many on phones and trying to get through, but we have a paper copy nonetheless. So I request a roll call meeting for attendance.
Brianna Beselick.
Here.
Ken Imers.
Here.
Andrea Graham. Here. Kirk Lund.
Here.
And Amy Litcher.
Here, sorry, Kurt. All right. Then we will move on to agendas and revision approval. Are there any agenda changes that are requests from any board members? All right, then I will ask for a motion.
I move that we approve the agenda as presented.
I'll second the motion.
It's been moved and seconded. If there's no discussion, then this can be by a voice vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Same sign, opposed, same sign. All right, the agenda has been approved. All right, then moving on to the board section, the board reports, and I will present from the Facilities Committee that met on November 28th, 2022. The Facilities Committee met and we discussed, we didn't get through all the action items, and we have another meeting on December 14th, which is open to all board members, and it's an open meeting. But at the facility scheduling, it was discussed scheduling for gyms and just some changes to an administrative policy that was made at that time, and then discussed preliminarily the solar projects, and then prioritizing the district needs as far as facilities and where we should spend the dollars. That is going to be, will be discussed at the next meeting on December 14th. So, are there any questions from that meeting? All right, then we will move on to the Policy Committee.
Yeah, the Policy Committee met December 1st, and we had the chief there, Officer Johnson, Dr. Olson, Ms. Graham was there, myself, and Mr. Considine was there as well. And it was great to just be able to ask some of the remaining questions that we had from our meeting and have clarifications on things. And I think a lot of that is just what it was. Like, this is what was written. What did you mean by that? What does it mean? So it was great to have that conversation and to have Mr. Considine there, because then he could then refer back to, these are the situations we've already seen. This is kind of what we've done before. Just to kind of make sure that policy matched what was in the agreement and vice versa. So it was really good conversation. We're excited for the partnership, and they were definitely open books with us. So we appreciated that. Any questions?
In that Policy Committee meeting, was it discussed, and is it in future items, or will it be at a future meeting, to match up the proposed SRO contract that it's as it stands now with policy 5540 of the governmental agencies, the
one that we looked at before?
Yes.
Yeah, so we kind of dug through that a little bit, and we decided that with what was in there and what was in the policy, everything meshed as needed.
Okay.
So, yeah.
I thought it was a really good contract put together, and I particularly liked the having it as an attachment, the strategic plan. that was really helpful to kind of see the full picture.
All right. We will move on if there's no other discussion, questions? Then on to Ms. Tasha Naylor as far as the business services report.
Good evening. So for my report tonight, I am going to introduce Mr. Brian Anderson. He's a CPA from our audit firm Whipley. He's here with us virtually. And he is going to report on our audit from 21-22 school year. So I will turn it over to you, Brian.
Yep, thanks, Tasha. Yeah, once again, Brian Anderson from Whipley. Thank you for allowing me to join virtually here. I've got another school district I just presented to, so thanks for allowing me to get two in one night here. So once again, I'll just go over the highlights of the financial statements very quickly and then just be available if anybody has any questions at the end. So I think I can share my, you don't have screen sharing, so I can just go, do you have the financials in front of you? You just want me to go over that myself?
Yes, they have copies of.
Oh, they have copies? Okay, great. So start off on the financial statements. Our opinion is on page 1. We always start with that because obviously that's what you give us, or what you pay us to do is to give an opinion on the financial statements. The format has changed a little bit from the prior year, and that now we describe the report on the financials and give our opinion right there in the second paragraph, but everything is basically the same as far as our procedures go. So we can happily report that in our opinion, everything is fairly presented there in that second paragraph. And then it does kind of go into a little bit more detail on the basis for our opinion. It reiterates that management is responsible for the financial statements. We do help put the financials together for the district, but everything is based on information given to us by Tasha and her team there. So they take responsibility for everything that's in this financial statements. So basically it kind of reiterates what our responsibility is on that page 2 there. We're required to do testing, evaluate certain things in regards to trying to find misstatements in the financial statements. And then the rest of the opinions kind of just giving some other various opinions on the other information in the financial statements. So that's our opinion. As far as going into the financial statements, that first set of statements on page 4 is a balance sheet that kind of includes everything as a whole, which would be your capital assets, net of depreciation, and also the bonds that you would have outstanding at this point in time. So it is useful just to kind of give an overall picture of the school district. The thing that we look for here is on the bottom there's 3 categories of net position, being your net investment of capital assets, which is your capital assets less the debt, restricted amounts, various restrictions, your net pension asset is restricted, you have some tax levies that are restricted for debt service and so on and so forth. And then your unrestricted would be everything that's remaining. So what we look for there is just positive balances in all 3 categories, and we're happy to report you do have positive balances there. As far as the net change in position, you did have a $4.6 million, almost $4.7 million change in net position. Kind of the timing of capital assets not being, they're capitalized and not expensed, that definitely helps increase the net position there. But obviously it's a good trend seeing that increase there. The funds are there on page 6. It shows your general fund separate, your debt service separate. Since it is a little bit larger than the other funds, there's some quantitative factors that make debt service to be a major fund. But once again, what we're looking for here is just positive balances in all of those funds, and there are. And then another thing that we kind of look at is that unassigned balance in the general fund. We could kind of compare that to your expenditures to kind of see how many months of balances you have outstanding. Kind of helps you weather some storms and maybe limit any borrowings that you may have to have for short-term purposes. So we can report there you got $5.9 million of unassigned balances compared to $19.9 million of expenditures there on page 8. So you're a little over 25% or 3 months of reserves, so that kind of helps you weather some storms. We recommend at least having 2 months, and you're over that percentage, so that's a good thing. Yeah, really, the page 8 does have your change in fund balance for each of those major funds, and the general fund did have a positive increase for the year, so that's a good thing. Yeah, debt service did have a positive increase as well. You did have some refinancing during the year, so that kind of throws some timing changes in there, having additional amounts that you borrow to kind of help pay for future principal payments. So that's kind of what that is. And then the other non-major funds did have a positive increase as well. So you do have some fiduciary funds that are kind of smaller funds. You have some scholarship funds as private purpose funds, your employee benefit trust funds to kind of pay for future retiree benefits, and then a small amount of formerly agency funds, but now they're called custodial funds, where you're holding money for student activities. So that's there for you to review in case you're curious. So I won't dive into too much detail on the notes to the financials, other than maybe pointing out on page 22, you are allowed to borrow up to 10% of your equalized valuation. So you're allowed to borrow up $134 million. You had $28 million as of the end of the year. I know you just passed a referendum, so congrats there. You're going to borrow a little more against that, but as of this point in time, you got $107 million of availability for future debt. The rest of the financials, probably nothing else significant to point out until we get to page 50. So we are asked to kind of give a couple other opinions because you do receive state and federal grants. So we're just required to report on your internal control over financial reporting, and then any compliance with any state statutes or other laws and regulations that we find. And as far as internal control reporting, we just have the two findings that we probably reported. Well, this is our third year doing the audit, and it's the same findings we had the last 2 years, and you probably had these same findings for a while now, and I'll kind of go into a little more detail in the rest report on what those findings are, but no concerns, just to give you a heads up on that. But no other compliance issues. And then specifically on page 52, we're asked to review your major federal programs by definition. We go through a risk process to identify what those major programs are, and then we're required to test compliance and internal control with those programs. And we're happy to report there was no issues there as well. As I mentioned before, if you go ahead to page 61, it'll kind of detail out the segregation of duties. And this is just inherent with being a small district, that there is opportunities there to kind of bypass some internal controls, just because you just can't split up duties enough where somebody's able to initiate transactions, reconciling them, and initiate, record, and reconcile. There's just not enough people there to do that. So really, it is what it is. And our recommendation with that is just to be aware of that. And you as a board, just make sure you're reviewing everything as you always do, and ask questions if something's out of line. And then the second finding there is financial accounting and reporting. Obviously, these are long financials, nothing against Tasha and her staff there, but they don't really go through the training to put these together. I feel like they've done a great job of getting the trial balance in order and giving us everything we need to do all the DPI required reporting and all the testing all the reporting that's required to maintain the grants, but the pension disclosures and the other post-employment benefit disclosures can get a little complex. So I guess by definition, we have to put that as a finding in the report. But like I said, nothing against them and what they need to be done to run the day-to-day finances of the school district. So that's the report. There is another letter in regards to required communication. So that kind of highlights a lot of the things that I've already discussed. So you can kind of review that. There were no changes in accounting policies this year affecting the district. There was a new lease standard this year. They're required to put operating leases on the balance sheet, but we did a review of the leases that the district has, and I think that they had a couple but they weren't significant enough for anybody to worry about, and it wouldn't affect any position. I think it was like $1,000 a year, which is not significant at all. So we didn't even worry about addressing that in the financial statements. Just reviewing, there was a couple audit entries, and I'm just going to refresh myself on what those entries were. I don't think there were anything major. adjusting Fund 72 investments, which is the private purpose trust, we needed to record some unrealized loss on those amounts. I think that was the only. Oh, and then mental health receivable at the end. So one was 38,000, one was 16,000. So nothing major at all when you're looking at millions of dollars on the financial statements. So overall, Tasha and team does a great job. No disagreements with management. They represented that they've given us everything to do our audit and prepare the financial statements. They didn't consult with any other accountants. And that letter does detail out the internal control matters that I previously mentioned. So overall, it was definitely a good audit, as it has been the past few years, and appreciate the cooperation that I get to do everything. And I feel like overall the district's in a pretty good financial position to kind of meet their current needs. And once again, congratulate you on the referendum. I'm sure that's going to bring some new challenges, but it's definitely much needed, I'm sure, to improve your buildings. So with that, I'll just be available for any questions anybody has.
Does anyone have any questions? For the both findings, the number 001 and 002, do you see those across similar sized districts across the state? Same?
Yeah, definitely. Yep, definitely on maybe even a couple districts, even slightly bigger than you, and definitely on any school district less than you. I mean, I think in order to kind of get rid of that first one, you probably have to have 4 people in the finance department. And then to kind of get rid of the second one, you got to have somebody that definitely probably used to work as an auditor. I think a couple districts used to have some business managers that used to be an auditor. So we are allowing that one. It's still a finding, but it's not significant enough to put in writing. So overall, like I said, nothing against anybody there, and it's just kind of inherent in having a district your size.
Okay. Any other questions? All right, hearing none, thank you so much to yourself and your firm, and then also thank you to Tasha for keeping such good books to making it easy. So,
Yep.
All right, moving on unless Tasha, do you have anything else?
I don't.
Okay, then moving on to Dr. Olson's administrative report.
All right. I just wanted to start out by saying I brought you all a poinsettia tonight from the FFA greenhouse. They're doing a poinsettia sale today after school. And from what the students have told me, there are 3 different varieties. I believe 3, maybe 4. There's a regular poinsettia. There's the red poinsettia with the mouse ears, which are like a rounded edge. There's a pink poinsettia with the mouse ears, which is also a rounded edge, and then the speckled one. So this was their first, product from the greenhouse, and so they'll be selling them until they run out. I think they were $7. So if you wanted any more, but please, I have bags up here in case it gets colder tonight, but please take one on your way out tonight and enjoy. So I am thrilled to introduce Jessica Noche and Megan Collins to give you an update for the Multilingual Learner Department. I provided some rationale as why Jessica suggested the program name change, which makes a lot of sense. And I am thrilled about the work that they are doing, and really wanted to give them a chance to be in front of the board to showcase that investment that the board did make back in August with increasing our staffing in this department, which was so much needed. But it's been thrilling to see how far they've been able to take this program since then.
Thank you, Tanya. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
It's super intimidating. I just want you to know that. First of all, thank you. Thank you for giving us this opportunity to present in front of you, for realizing the importance of this program and for supporting it over the summer and the growth and advancement of it. So our agenda is just going to be to talk about the program team, our MLs, so our actual multilingual learners, who are we working with, and the actual program, a day in the life of an ML teacher, something we call SLIFE, which is a subset of the ML population I wanted to talk about a little bit, cultural responsivity and why that's important for our students, the why we do what we do, and then, of course, questions and concerns. Next slide. So this is your team that has been growing since I got here. I came 3 years ago, excitedly, and since then we've added Julia Dami on the bottom as a bilingual paraprofessional. So she takes care of all written translations for our families and teachers. And additionally, she works directly with students, especially students that speak only Spanish, because she is bilingual. And then we've added on this year, thanks to your approval, Megan Collins, who is an exceptional third grade teacher, and I was able to steal her from the third grade team and add her to my team, which has been such an asset. So she'll have a moment to share what she does and why it's powerful for her. So that's the whole team. I'm the coordinator, but I still do teach. I work mostly at the high school and middle school now, and I'm also the main contact for all of our families. So anything from today, I was with Officer Jessica. We had to do a home visit for a family. So from that to making sure that they have the gifts that they need for Christmas or any other kind of communication. It's very rewarding. So this is our program, 3.9 approximately. We have a new report card out, so I didn't check the latest numbers, but I'm sure it's pretty close. Of our actual students are multilingual learners. What that means is that they identify as students who need support with their English language because they're identified as speaking more than one language or hearing more than one language 50% or more in their home life. But in the reality, 10% of our population here at Lake Mills is Hispanic or Latinx. So these are students that I don't necessarily, and Megan doesn't necessarily interface with on a regular basis, but we support them culturally and sometimes linguistically in terms of translation and liaison. 18% of that population, so that first number of 3.9, are what we call SLIFE students, and I'll be talking more about that in future slides. So we do an inclusionary support and co-teaching program here, which is pretty phenomenal for a small district. Oftentimes, because of lack of faculty, you can only pull students out for intervention groups. We have the opportunity here to really provide our students and therefore their families with a comprehensive approach that allows us to co-teach with teachers, create capacity, and build rapport between students and teachers and then within the program. Our support delivery is an integrated program. We're learning more about this as the DPI is changing protocol. So we started off with a content-based program, and this year we'll be switching that to both a content-based program, an integrated program, which is that co-teaching or inclusionary support program, and also a newcomer program, which is some of the work that I'll talk about with the SLIFE. And we're breaching a tipping point with bilingual, which essentially means that I'll start to build a lot of recognition and acknowledgement with that, with the DPI and CISA too, to understand what we need to do in good faith measures to align with DPI requirements for that. Our family engagement, as I talked about, is pretty comprehensive. I know all of our families really well. Megan's building that relationship as well as the relationships with the students. I've been to many of their homes. I speak with them regularly. Now that the program is growing is really create capacity for teachers. And one way that we're doing that is with a pretty significant professional development rollout. And what that looks like this year, because of Erin's help when she was a principal at the elementary school, she came up with the idea of placing our ML program in an action team, which is a monthly meeting that teachers have. So this means that Megan can roll out direct strategies to the teachers working with these students that are useful for teachers. Another thing that we're doing is Chuck and I worked close on doing a launch PD with the MS staff. We did that last week, and now they're going to be getting a strategy during their team meetings, a total of 6 strategies through the rest of the year to help create capacity for them as well. Additionally, I did a pretty comprehensive PD at the high school on our SLIFE students. You'll be getting a little bit of that. I keep saying that. It's coming. And then through in-service and working with Erin, we're going to roll out a culturally responsive PD for each of the schools to help build capacity there as well. Man, he's good. He really knows when to flip the slides. I'm going to let Megan talk about her experience.
Hi, everyone. I'm Megan Collins, and currently I'm the multilingual teacher at the elementary school. So, on a daily basis, I meet with all 32 of my students, addressing all modes of communication with them, listening, reading, speaking, and writing. And as you will see from our photos, you'll see me floating in and out of classrooms, pulling small groups every day. So if you could go ahead and click that, if you could go back and click the link. There you go, the ML family. We call ourselves an ML family. If you click, there you go. Okay. It's the techie in me, sorry. Oh, okay. Oh my goodness, isn't he cute? Okay, every day I start all of my interactions by purposely building students' oracy, speaking to them and teaching them through vocabulary. As you can see, I go into the writing lessons. Of course, always have time for some singing rhymes in kindergarten to work on listening skills. We have a few giggles along the way as we work on our reading. I co-teach with many of the co-teachers. We work on focusing on key language usage. Our ML students are all actively engaged in learning of language every day. Even our very own has been there. And I end with working with a newcomer. As you know, I speak very little Spanish, but I work with students who there's multi-languages happening at the elementary school, Romanian, Hindi, Hmong, many different languages, and it's just a joy to work with every day. I was going to tell you all I have the best job at the elementary school, working with Jess and the other teachers and Wendy and all the students, but I didn't want to make anybody feel bad. But I do have the best job, so thank you.
Thank you, Megan. All right. As promised, this is the SLIFE information I wanted to share with you, which I think is pretty profound. I'm going to start by talking about this photo. So this student's name is, can I say a student's name?
Probably the first, but not the last.
Yeah, so his name starts with a W. He's new here. He came 2 months ago from Guatemala, and he came with his uncle. His uncle was actually already here. And his journey was pretty profound. He doesn't have family anymore. He lost his parents. And one of the first things he said to me when I was meeting with the counselors at the high school was, "Can I learn how to play an instrument?" And I was like, "No." I didn't say that. I paused because I was like, I don't know how to do that. And I was lucky enough to be able to connect with the music teacher who made it happen. So we took some time that day to sit him down and try a couple different instruments. The music teacher doesn't speak Spanish. I didn't even translate that much. I just watched them interact and how they engaged in communicating where to put his fingers and how to play the instruments. So when we talk about these students and what Lake Mills School District does for them, we're really talking about life-changing events, right? What we're able to do for them is really spectacular. So these students, these SLIFE students, which is a subset of the EL population, and I'm still gonna sometimes use EL because I'm learning as well, are students with limited interrupted formal education. This student hasn't been in school since 6th grade for different reasons. We have a high schooler that hasn't been in school since kindergarten, and several others that haven't been in school since 6th grade. And the incredible teachers in that school and the counselors and the administration make sure that they're supporting the ML program and supporting the needs of these students, which can be really tricky. The reason that this is so profound is that these students are typically refugees and asylum seekers. So they're coming from countries that are not safe for them and their families, and we are a safe place for them. They're typically in grades 6 through 12. We have 6 of these students currently at the high school. We also have 5 newcomers in the elementary school. We have some from Romania and some from Nicaragua. Most of them are below grade level in all academic areas, and they're very different than our traditional multilingual learners. They're often less comfortable with school culture. They haven't been there. Their family hasn't been there, and customs. They can't use the transfer of language. So what that means is they can't use what they know in English yet to help them, or what they even know in Spanish, because oftentimes their education in Spanish maybe ended when they were in 4th or 5th grade as well. And they're very disconnected from family. So mom still lives in the country, or something like that. They don't have that same support. When we look at cultural responsivity for these students, we're looking at understanding what's underneath that iceberg. And this is something that we as a program are starting to really push out with teachers to help them understand how deeply different this population is. We also look at things that the culture here is more of an individualist culture. So when kids are taking tests, it's more like what you can do. Where often our families come from collectivist cultures where they work in groups or teams to produce results. They might have skills outside of school. So some of them know how to farm or know how to do really advanced things with their families or their family businesses that we might not know. We have one student that can navigate a computer at a local restaurant where he works with his dad, but we're still trying to teach him reading. So it's really fascinating to see how these skill sets can intertwine. They're learning both English and academics at the same time, which can be challenging. Most of their culture is oral learning, so for them to transfer that into our culture is a bit tricky. They're also very functional in their learning, so what can I use this for? So these are all the types of things that we as an ML department work to bridge for the teachers to help them understand that, how to work with these kids. All right, the why. So when we look at kind of like the birthing of this program, it actually was based on a Civil Rights Act of 1974, when the government started to recognize that immigrants were coming to this country of multi-different languages and they weren't being supported in the school districts. And this has to do with the Equal Education Opportunity Act. So what we work under, Megan and I, in the district, is something called WIDA, which stands for World Class Instructional Design and Assessment. So all the standards that we use and the things that we do with these students come from that. So we do a lot of PD on that. We make sure that we're up to date on all the newest things. We also work with something called CAN-DOs, which help us teach teachers the asset base of these students and move them forward on those descriptors. The other thing we provide for staff is something called an ELDP. This is an English Language Development Plan. Each student has one. They're located on EduClimber, so we upload them every year, and it shows all these different, their scores on the Access test, which is under WIDA, and everything else teachers need to know about them, whether or not they need translations, a little bit about their personality. The second part of the why, and when I say why, I talk about the structures of our programming, is the Access test, which we are in the middle of now. The testing window opened last week, so I began testing today. This is a 4-part state-issued test for all ML students. So as you can imagine, it's quite exhausting for them. They work really hard on it every year. It has a listening, reading, speaking, and writing component. We also work We are currently bridging what many school districts face right now, which is called long-term ML, so the LTMLs. These are students who have been in the program for 5 to 7 years. So we're starting to build an understanding between Megan and I and a goal-setting process moving forward to help exit these students from the program earlier. And by having a new ML teacher at the elementary school, we're able to provide those students with enough supports to hopefully get them out of the program so they're not getting stuck in it. Can you go back to the previous slide? I just want to talk about my why. I went to my first quinceañera when I was 21 years old. A quinceañera is a 15-year-old birthday that female Hispanic students celebrate, and it's a pretty major event. This past summer, I was invited to my second quinceañera here in Lake Mills with this student, and it was incredible. My husband went with me, but it was clear that it was a unique circumstance for both of us. To be able to work in a district, in a community where the families know me and feel safe enough with me to invite me to something like this is certainly my why. Do you have any questions? Thank you. Next slide.
Yeah, I just, a couple things. One thought is I really appreciate the name change, the multilingual. I think it certainly, like you indicated, it emphasizes the positives. I think instead of identifying a deficiency, so to speak. So that's a terrific. When I saw that, I thought, wow, you know, what a name can do to images and things. So
Thank you.
what if a person were to come into the district, maybe with a pretty lower level understanding of English, and they arrive in 8th grade, let's say, in the middle school, how would that support look if they're in a history class and they're having, you know, struggling with the words and things? Is the group that you get together with where they kind of sort things out? Is that...
That's a great question. So typically a newcomer in kindergarten in the first part of middle school will get direct phonics intervention. So for example, we have a second-year newcomer this year, and last year I worked with her on a pull-out group to teach her English from phonics up. In our high school, we do a number of things. Really great question, because this is something I wanted to touch on. Mirna Ferrello is our Spanish teacher at the high school, and when Cale hired her, he gave allotment in her schedule to work with some EL students, now ML students, and when I met with her, she chose to work with newcomers. So we have a separate English curriculum for those students, and a separate class settings for them, where she works with them, teaching them direct English acquisition at their level. Additionally, the paraprofessional sits in those classes like biology, stretch algebra, in a couple history classes to translate directly for them. We did a lot of translating of curriculum over the summer, and additionally, I've been able to get a few books on the curriculum in Spanish. So we try to use both language for them to access. They're learning English, but they're also learning the core content in their, we call it their L1, their first language. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, thank you. That's good.
I also want to say I like the name change. I like the idea of coming at it from an asset lens rather than deficit lens. Essentially, you're giving them credit for the language they already speak instead of focusing on their, you know, the fact that they're learning a new language. So thank you.
Yeah, I'd love to take credit for that, but it's a statewide and countrywide move. But to your point about asset-based, the can-do descriptors are based on that. These are the things I can do. Don't miss that. Don't see what I can't do. Don't look at the fact that I'm struggling. We often say, if you could ask the student this question in Spanish and they knew the answer, then they're just as proficient as their peers. So we don't want to miss those pieces. So it is really important to be asset-based. And we have a great staff that looks at students' assets when they're working with them, which is amazing. Thank
I was
you.
wondering, based on the language levels that we have, and like I heard that Megan has 32 students, but 32 students that are at a level 4 is very different than, you know, if you have 5 or 6 newcomers. So I was just wondering if you think the staffing is sufficient at this point, or what could be improved in that
I mean, is staffing ever sufficient? I actually was, there's some goals I have. I hope as a program, Megan and I can do this. Part of our goal is that as we start to get these deep supports, students will test out. So Megan has 32 students, and I additionally have 32 students between the two schools. So we're over 60 students for sure. Some districts, that one teacher has 70 students. This district chose to take that away and really develop the program, which is incredible. So that is one hope. Another hope of the program is that we do build capacity for teachers. What we could potentially see someday with enough PD, enough circling of teachers, is what is sometimes called a social justice model, where rather than having clusters of students in one classroom, these students would be in multiple different classrooms with the teachers layering on these direct supports for students and the ML teachers supporting teachers and working with those students that may be a level 1.
Yeah, do we have other classroom teachers who are also dual certified in ESL?
We do. I believe we have 2.
Okay.
Am I right about that, Megan? I think there's 2, and they're both at the elementary, if I remember from asking around. Yeah.
And then at what grade level can kids start taking Spanish? Is that 6th grade?
6th grade, no. Tell me, Chuck? 7th.
Do
But
most of our
hey, we want to
Spanish-
do something where we teach kids Spanish from kindergarten on. Wouldn't that be great? Sorry, I interrupted you.
I guess if you did have a magic wand, what else would you want for this programming, or any other like needs that you would want the board to know?
I think with this bilingual piece, after I assess that with CISA 2 and DPI and understand what would account for a good faith effort of this school, and they've given me some ideas, but I didn't want to present that to Tanya and the board until I knew what that looked like, a way to serve that. And it's not just Lake Mills. Apparently this figure that they're giving us is very old, and nobody's been doing it, but it is coming up. There's something called the LIP crosswalk that we're talking about with CISA 2 and DPI, and that's where it says when you reach 10 or more students of the same language in K through 3rd, you need to have something for that language. And whether or not that can look like a specials class that's Spanish or something a little bit more bilingual. And what that could look like is me doing bilingual. I'm also bilingual certified, so it could look like me doing bilingual classes, just in math for certain groups of students, and then maybe needing more support someplace else. But I think until we see a huge or significant increase in numbers, and I really hesitate to say this, but I think we're good. I think you guys did it. I think what happened last summer, and I should ask Megan, are we good, Megan? I think what we're doing is we're pretty lucky. I feel really blessed. So, did that answer your question?
Yeah, thank you.
All right. Are there any other questions?
I just have to say thank you. With the other hats that I wear throughout the day, I get to see many of these ladies in action, and it's been phenomenal. I mean, even with the 4K kiddos. And so I think, like you said, our kiddos are learning too, because these words are being repeated for them, and their Spanish words are being repeated. And so our kiddos are like, well, what does that mean? And I just think it's really great to have that connection with the kids from the beginning to the end, and they just get to know each other on a different level and support each other. And so, yeah, I think it's an amazing program, and I'm thankful for all of the work you've done.
Thank you.
I would just add to that too, Megan. My son is in 3rd grade, and he just mentioned that you come into his class, and he had no idea why you're just in there to teach. So he sees you as just another teacher. So I think that's important too, that we're not, like he didn't realize that you were an EL teacher. So just you're there to teach kids. So thank you for being there for all the kids and not labeling and that. So
Yeah.
good job. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, we will move on.
I'm just still blown away by all the work that the two of you do. It's so refreshing. We have one more presentation tonight, so I asked 2 representatives from Smith Rosenfeld to talk to us about solar energy. This had been a topic at our facilities committee meeting, and looking at some opportunities. There's quite a bit of money in grants out there right now, and just looking at, is there an opportunity to invest in renewable energy in the district and our buildings, and have that payback from having solar panels put on any of the buildings. So actually, I'll ask Trenton Smith and Mario. I realize I don't know how to say your last name like after all the times I've talked with you. So I'll let you introduce yourselves, and they've got a presentation here about what their company does and some of the benefits of solar.
Thank you, Tanya. My name is Trenton Smith, as Tanya indicated, and I'm president of Smith Rosenfeld. We're an engineering and commissioning company based in Madison, Wisconsin. We work probably 90 or 95% in K-12 schools, and our focus is on the energy efficiency typically. That's what our engineering and our commissioning efforts revolve around.
Hi, so I'm Mario Melanzi with Upper 90 Energy. So we partner closely with Trenton's firm. We handle mostly like the contracting side of it, so the actual work itself, implementing that work. So again, just wanted to introduce myself and just showed a little bit of some of the places that we've been around in Wisconsin in the K-12 space. So we focus on capital planning, energy efficiency, like Trenton mentioned. We get into a little bit of the renewables, as well as sustainability. So we've just got a short presentation here, and we'll just take any questions at the end. So wanted to just introduce the team that we have behind us. We're a local firm here, and so we've kind of built up a grassroots effort over the years, and so we're excited to continue to add members of our team. Today we'll just be talking a little bit about the grant that Tanya mentioned. It is through the Public Service Commission. We're going to be focusing more on the solar piece of that today, but I also wanted to mention that we're proposing to also provide a energy efficiency assessment as well. And the reason for that is because, and we'll talk a little bit more about that, but what most folks don't realize is when you're producing energy at a site, you want to make sure that you've driven out a certain amount of waste within your existing operations. So I'll give you a quick example. So let's just say, for instance, you're producing, you have a solar system that's producing 10% of your electricity that you need. Well, if you have antiquated systems or equipment that has a waste, let's call it, just by not being up to date of 10%, now you're just breaking even. Does that make sense? So now the financial outlook of that solar system is drastically different, and you would have likely not made that investment. So what we're going to be proposing is to just also look at those energy efficiency items and would bring that back to you and say, if you were to make this investment in solar, it would also be a good idea to, at some point in the near future, to also tackle some of these recommendations. So with that being said, I wanted to just mention at least what our role would be with a project like this. So we're talking about a specific grant and the application process that goes with this. So of course, we can't write the grant for the school district, so we propose to, I use the term co-author the grant. So we propose a lot of the technical nature behind it. Where do you put it? How big is it? What does it cost? How much does it produce? All those technical components, even from equipment, because of course there's many different kinds of solar panels out there. There's of course a process to get it hooked up and connected, and then a monitoring and educational component to that as well. So we'll look at those kinds of things, and we just asked the district for a couple of components of the application as well. So for instance, I don't know the history of your district as well as you do. So there's a few questions in there that talk about, tell us what you've done over the last few years around this kind of a space and that type of thing. So, one more slide back, sorry. I also just wanted to talk about, I mentioned from the contracting piece, so Trenton's group would look into the engineering aspect of it, but in terms of contracting the work itself, we would act as, I would consider ourselves like a general contractor for energy efficiency and renewable items. So we're soliciting the bids, we're specifying the materials, and providing that project to our K-12 customers in a turnkey fashion, if you will. So I asked our engineer and Trenton's as well to just go ahead and put a little sample project just for the group to look at. So by no means are we promoting this level of a project at all. I just wanted something of substance for the group to be looking at. So this is at the middle school, and there are a few criteria that the engineer will look at in terms of where to put it, but I just wanted to show you an example of some of the what I call like the pro forma of a project, how big it is, how much it costs, how much it saves, and that type of thing. So if you were to add a grant award to this kind of a project, that of course makes the project cost that much less and the simple payback that much better. Okay. The reason I have this slide up here is to just tell you a little bit about how we might size the system. And this isn't your utility data, but what we would do is collect the data that that your buildings use, both the cost and the consumption, and we're going to graph that. And the reason that we do this is because we want to make sure that we size the system accordingly so that we're capturing as much of your energy load, the energy that you're using, without going over. And the reason we don't want to go over is because in the state of Wisconsin right now they have a policy called net metering, and it's not exactly as favorable for the end user. So for instance, if you were to buy your electricity at a certain rate, if you are making more than you need on that given day, you're giving it back to the grid more or less at a significantly reduced cost. So if you add that into the financial performance, it again makes that payback go out further, and it might not be as attractive of an investment. So we size that accordingly, and it just so happens that in the months that you're using the most energy is the winter, and that's when the system is producing the least. So it's like an inverse curve of one another. Typically, the solar panels are doing the best in the summer when you're maybe you don't have as much operations happening, there's not as much activity in the buildings just over summer and things like that. So just wanted to note that we size it that way accordingly. From a next step standpoint, again, thank you for the opportunity to share this. We're proposing to, like I said, co-author a grant application with the district. We've sent Tanya an actual agreement for that that outlines what is all contained within that exercise, as well as the preliminary energy assessment that goes along with that. So like from a next step standpoint, we would be collecting your utility data and scheduling site walkthroughs to put together a few different options to present back to the district to say, this might be what we're thinking, and you're going to give us some feedback and say yes or change this, change that. So just wanted to just throw out a sample of what it looks like when we collect your utility data. So we're going to graph it and look at it over the last couple of years. We're going to benchmark that against like schools and buildings in this geographical area, just because it has to do with climate. And we're going to say something like, you're doing pretty good, but there's always room for improvement. So we just took a little drive around before we came here and could see inside some of the buildings, and we've definitely we've been in many, many buildings from the outside. They look like they're in fairly good condition, so I'm curious to see what we find, from the bills themselves, and we'll kind of see where you measure up and make some recommendations from there. So the last piece I would leave you with is just timeline from the grant itself. It's due at the end of January. So fairly decent timeline, but I think, in terms of the work that we would need to do to put that application together is definitely feasible on our side. And like I said, we can talk further, Tanya, about what any sort of approval, or we would just want to make sure that the district has a chance to review the application and make any personal touches to that, to the application. So I don't know if you have anything else to add, Trenton, but otherwise, yeah, again, thank you for having us, and if any, please look to answer any questions.
Are there any questions?
I was just wondering how the relationship between the district and how did that come about? And
I've actually known these two for a while, so part of what I think came about was just some informal conversations and talking about solar, and they brought up the grant opportunity, and in looking at the grant, it's not an easy grant to write. Like they said, you do need a technical partner unless you work in that field and to be able to do that. So we just talked briefly at the facilities committee meeting about that. Just I wanted to kind of gauge, like, is there any interest in this? And there was, and so I thought it would be easier to have them come present to the whole board and take it back to the facilities committee. We have another meeting this Wednesday and go further into the process about next steps. Do we want to pursue this? And so I wanted you to all hear at least an overview of what the grant entails. So I met with Harvey Simden today to talk more about some of the benefits of solar and what he's seeing, because he's obviously got his eye on all of the controls in the building and monitors that quite heavily.
Just to add, it's the Public Service Commission has administered this grant since 2018. We've written a couple successful grants already for school districts, but they've continued to expand the activities and the eligible applicants. So it is a fairly competitive grant. This round is $10 million, and for the solar, or I should say solar, all of the renewable activities are grouped into a couple of different categories. Like one is like energy storage, for example. So like we're not pursuing that particular activity here, but all of the renewables of the 10 million is, I believe it's like just under 4.5 million of appropriated funds for that activity.
so we're not required to bid this like you would other projects. I guess that's what I'm wondering.
Right, and that was something I wanted to talk with the facilities committee about on Wednesday as far as going through the next steps. I think the one thing that's going to be hard with this is the due date of the grant, so in light of that, but we'll be discussing that, or I was sharing some things with you on Wednesday about that.
Just a quick question. You said it's been going on. Is there another round going to be in January 2024?
My understanding is yes.
Okay.
That the money is actually from 2009 investment recovery dollars. So the state has received this money just like other states, and the Public Service Commission is the governing body of that. And so, they continue to invest those monies. So it kind of eventually will run out, I suppose. But they, for the foreseeable future, I think this grant will be available.
And for the school districts that have won the grants, what percentage is, like, I saw a number 600,000 in your example of the
Yeah.
example. So upper grant, is that percentage-wise, or?
They do have maximum allowable, requests as far as how that would go. But the other thing I will mention is the application itself, and I have a copy here too, Tanya, if I can leave it with you, is they do not require a match, but it is, of course, recommended in terms of enhancing that application. So We've reviewed applications in previous years of applicants that have been both successful and unsuccessful, and of course, the ones that are successful tend to have a match component. They also tend to have letters of support from, you know, in this instance, it would be, I would say, maybe the mayor or a county board member or something to that effect, showing that, you know, that the district is committed and serious about that investment, so.
And lastly, is there any upfront costs to submitting this grant?
There is not.
Okay.
No.
On the link that I had sent you previously for the Public Service Commission, if you scroll down there, they have the past 3 years of the award winners, so you can see the ranges in the grant awards. So I mean, smaller ones like $60,000 up to $250,000, and there's some even larger ones on the business sides of things. So I think it kind of ran the gamut, and I know one of the conversations I had with these two was, you know, looking at, okay, if we did it all, this is what this would cost, but really we also have to look at the district costs. What would we be able to afford? What would we want to do? Obviously, we don't have, you know, a ton of money to spend, but is there a portion of a project that would make sense for us where we would, you know, see the payback from doing solar? So just something that, you know, the more that I've been in this area of just seeing kind of the push for solar, you know, especially here in Jefferson County. Just thought that we would definitely like to explore this topic. Especially, you know, when Tasha and I talk about the budget and look at things, I always think one of the more unpredictable things in our budget are utility bills and gasoline for buses. So those can sway, you know, either way quite a bit, and we never quite know where our budget is going to land. You can predict things, you know, from the previous year, but if you have a really, really cold winter, like a couple of years ago when you know, the gas prices really surged and it caught districts, you know, off guard. So they said just something that I wanted to explore with the board.
Yeah, I imagine that you're even seeing the energy costs month by month even starting to, it's a sizable increase in terms, not a few percentage points. It's definitely moving the needle for most folks. But yeah, and I think even just from a preliminary instance, it would be good to identify some of those other areas of opportunity, and then you can prioritize and say, these ones are more important to us, you know, for whatever reason.
If there is no objections from any board members, we can discuss the next steps at the facility committee meeting. All right?
That sounds great.
Thank
Thanks
you.
again for having us.
Yep,
Thank
thank
you.
you.
All right. Do you have a calendar?
Yep, so number 3, we've got the safety drill report, so those 3 are attached, and you'll see an overview from the principals, and then some areas that they would like to refine in the next drills, and so Kale will be submitting those up into the portal to make sure that we are in compliance, and luckily we've been in compliance with our safety drills every year, but this is something, does not need board action, but we do need to share those reports with the school board by the 1st of the calendar year. If there's no questions on that, I'll just go on to the school calendar.
I had one question about the safety drill.
Sure.
Have we talked about doing key cards for staff? I know that's a big change, scanning key cards rather than having physical keys, because I saw that one of the things was, and I'm
we
forgetting
started,
what the comment
right.
was, but I just know safety-wise, sometimes that's a better option than physical keys.
Yeah, we've gone back and forth. We've talked about some other options, especially at the elementary, with the big master doors that go to the hallway because support staff do not have keys to key into those areas. So as an admin team, we started looking at areas that we would like to improve. EMC Insurance, our liability carrier, is going to be coming in and doing a safety audit. So that was a part of Carol's request as being our safety person in the district. So they are coming in, this Friday, and doing a walkthrough of all the buildings and looking at what areas can we improve in this. And it even goes down to, you know, staff asking, who are you if you don't have a name tag on, you know, your clothing. So they will be coming through and then making recommendations back to us about things like that.
I'd be curious to know even just the cost, like I have no idea what that would cost
Yeah.
or if it would, so something to look into. And then one of the things I noticed about the high school was school's expectation for cell phone usage during the drill was something that needed to be revisited. So the students have cell phones in their classrooms and everything, correct?
Mhm.
Okay, so that was something that needed to be addressed maybe.
Yeah, that's like a whole nother.
A whole nother ball of wax. So, okay, we will reassess that.
All right, so the school calendar, we had actually gathered quite a bit of information and start the school calendar for the next year, like just basically moving the current year calendar over. I think parents and staff like the predictability of that. And then I meet with the admin team and go through like in-service days and the first day of school and things like that. And then I bring it back to the focus group, which is a cross-section of staff across the district. And actually this year they had quite a bit of really good feedback. One of the kind of awkward things in the calendar this year is that September 1st falls on a Friday. By law, school districts in Wisconsin cannot start before September 1st unless they apply for a waiver from the DPI, but the waivers are very specific. It usually involves construction or some act of nature that has prevented you from starting on the 1st. And so there's not a lot of flexibility in there. I brought that up to the staff and originally was planning on starting on September 1st, thinking it might be good to get the first day of school underway and just get that done. And the staff brought back several reasons why waiting until the Tuesday after Labor Day would be good. Some of that had to do with our staggered start that we do at the high school and at 4K and kindergarten, and having that continuity between the first day and then the second day. And they brought back feedback that this year with the staggered start in 4K and that, you know, by the first day of school, and then we had the Labor Day weekend, and then the second group started, and by the time they actually had the whole group, it kind of negated that first group's ability to come in and be ready to go for the first full day of school. And then we were worried about absenteeism on the first day, parents thinking like, well, you don't do a lot on the first day. We already have this family vacation planned and we'll just pull you out. So I really appreciated the feedback on that. It really only shifted the last day of school back one day, so it really didn't make a big difference. And then we talked a little bit about the winter break. And so it's nice to hear from the staff that are seeing things day in and day out. That would make sense. And I appreciated because none of the feedback from the staff was self-serving in any way. It was really like, this is what's best for kids. This is what's going to work best. So I thought their recommendations were awesome and took that back to the admin team who said, yep, that looks good. So, and then just a quick school board election update. So Amy's seat is up for election, and we've got several deadlines there. Luckily, thankfully, Amy did file her paperwork, and so we are waiting until January 3rd to see if any other candidates apply to be on the ballot for the April election, and then April 4th is the spring election, and then that on April 24th is when we hold the special meeting for the board reorganization where we elect officers and a couple of other things. So it's just a quick update there.
All right. During the school calendar, was that discussed as far as going to 5 days a week for 4K?
We are. So actually, we build out a separate 4K calendar. So that's not something that we've actually brought to the board to approve, but we could. But we are still working with Wendy and our 4K teachers to look at a proposal to shift 4K from 4 days a week to 5. We're just kind of working through some logistical things, and we could probably bring that back to the board probably next month, because we're not only just looking at that, but just even some of the communication out to the 4K parents and looking at switching up some of the registration and how we do it, having parents in the building a little bit more for some of those opportunities to get to see the site. And so there's many things involved, and we can have Wendy share that But yes, we're still working on that, so.
All right, any other questions? All right, hearing none. Has anyone signed up for the comment period?
No.
All right. Then, on to the consent agenda. This month's consent agenda includes the approval of the following: the November 21st regular meeting minutes, the November's facility committee proceedings, the December's policy committee proceedings, the treasurer's reports and vouchers and invoices, volume 31-2 policies, and personnel report. Is there a motion to either accept the consent agenda as read, or is there want of pulling out any items to be discussed?
I move the board approve the consent agenda as presented.
I'll second the motion.
Okay, is there any discussion? It's been moved and seconded. All right, hearing none. I will ask for a roll call vote.
Ken Imers,
Aye.
Andrea Graham,
Aye.
Kirk Lund,
Aye.
Amy Litcher,
Aye.
Brianna Beslick.
Aye.
All right, on to 6A action items. The school resource officer contract. I believe it's attached, and I will ask for any discussion or a motion to approve.
I just comment, I thought the revisions were very positive in the way they were done, and it seemed like a strong contract to me, basically.
And I think at the end, the duration, at the end it says, this is effective for a year. So we can always come back and revamp and see what's worked well and if we need any changes. And so I think, it seems great up to this point, and maybe we'll find something down the road. But I appreciated them working with us and being an open book with all of those various questions we had along the way.
Want to apologize for missing the policy committee meeting, but I was able to talk through it with Tanya about the suggestions and concerns that I had and feel good about the contract that we have.
Super. All right, then is there any other discussions or comments? If so, I will then ask for a motion.
I'll move the board approve the school resource officer contract as presented.
Second.
All right, any further discussion? Hearing none, I will ask for a roll call vote.
Andrea Graham,
Aye.
Kirk Lund,
Aye.
Amy Litcher,
Aye.
Brianna Beslick,
Aye.
Ken Imers.
Aye.
All right, on to approval of the 2023-2024 school calendar that Tanya just talked about.
I'll move the board approve the 2023-2024 school calendar as presented.
I second.
All right, it's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, I ask for a roll call vote.
Kirk Lund,
Aye.
Amy Litcher,
Aye.
Brianna Beslick,
Aye.
Ken Imers,
Aye.
Andrea Graham.
Aye.
All right, on to the high school rooftop units proposal, and as in the administrative content, these are two replacement rooftop rooftop units at the high school above the art and math rooms, and it's paid for partially with Fund 41 and partially with ESSER 3 funds. Anything to add?
I don't have anything to add.
Okay.
That's not.
There were two bids received, and a third wasn't able to be gotten because just nothing came through. So, all right.
I move the board accept the bid from Technique Mechanical for high school rooftop units in the amount of $46,000 with the possibility of a 5% increase.
I'll second the motion.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion or questions? I know this was the lower of the two bids.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Hearing none, I will ask for a roll call vote.
Amy Litcher,
Aye.
Brianna Beslick,
Aye.
Ken Imers,
Aye.
Andrea Graham,
Aye.
Kirk Lund.
Aye.
All right. Now we're to the portion of the gifts, and we're always thankful for the community for their generous support financially and personally to the school district.
And I ask for the motion for approval of the gifts.
I move the board accept the following gifts and thank the generous donors for the continued support of the students and programs of the Lake Mills Area School District. The following donations to the Lake Mills Elementary School. St. Vincent de Paul donated snow pants and boots for students valued at $450, and the Bank of Lake Mills donated tennis shoes and boots for students valued at $900. The following donations to the school district's food pantry. The Mill, a $100 donation from Candy Welsh. The Lake Mills Market donation of 10 turkeys valued at $150. A donation of 3 cases of plastic food storage containers valued at $225 from the Bard's Plastic Company. A $250 donation from a company called Alpha in Georgia. A $250 donation from the Bank of Lake Mills, and United Congregational Church peanut fundraiser of $940 for the mill. The following donations to the Lake Mills Recreation Department. Fort Healthcare sponsored a Club 55 Senior Center trip for $100 and a Youth Open Gym for $300, and an anonymous donation of $1,000 to Club 55.
I'll second.
All right, it's been moved and seconded. I would like to read the note as far as the donations from the Atlanta Corporation. The Foods High School teacher of Mrs. Vincenti contacted companies to see if they would donate containers that she could use to package up extra food from her foods class, and they could give to the Mill families. One company that didn't have any containers said they could donate, but said they could make a donation to the food pantry. And so that is why the $250 donation from the Alpha in Georgia. So I definitely want to give her a highlight to doing that and thinking of that as far as a possible or a potential donation to the mill. So
I just, amazed at the difference our high school kids are making in the lives of other community members here through the mill. That has really taken off, and just so proud of what the Interact group is doing over there.
All right. If there's no other comments, I will ask for a roll call vote.
Brianna Beselick.
Aye.
Ken Imers.
Aye.
Andrea Graham.
Aye.
Kirk Lund.
Aye.
Amy Litcher.
Aye. All right, future board action items. Would you, I can read them for approval of the WASBA resolutions for our January 10th meeting, open enrollment seats, recreation presentation, new course proposals, new meeting date for the business meeting in March, closed session for the district administrator evaluation, and a potential February 6th date for a board workshop with a combination of a board and administrative meeting. So, all right. And in addition to that, to add a potential talking with, if it's approved or at that January meeting, with the city council, a joint meeting to discuss all aspects of city and school district cooperation. So if that's, then that can be added to the January agenda.
Okay.
Are there any other items?
Sounds pretty busy.
Sounds like a long meeting. All right. Then I will ask for a motion to adjourn.
I'll move we adjourn.
I'll second the motion.
This can be by voice. All in favor, aye.
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 All opposed, same sign. Hearing none, this meeting is adjourned.